If you're starting your codependency recovery or you feel stuck and you really need some guidance, I'm going to give you 5 tips on how to create a successful codependency recovery. But first, my name's Michelle Ferris. I'm a psychotherapist and I love helping people create relationships that work. So the first thing you need to do is you need to make a list of codependent behaviors that you're struggling with, because we got to know what the problem is. And codependency impacts so many different areas that often people feel overwhelmed when they start because you might not know where to focus. I want you to focus on what is bringing you the most pain and the most discomfort right now. Whether it's relationship help, whether it's setting boundaries, whatever the issue is, I want you to write down maybe 4 or 5 issues that you're really struggling with right now, because then we know what the game plan is. Because these 4 or 5 issues are going to provide the roadmap for you to follow in the next several months or even year. The other thing is I want you to set some realistic goals, because setting realistic goals is going to help you succeed. Some good starter goals might be to improve your self-care, or to figure out what you want and need so that at some point you can start to set boundaries. Or what are some relationships that you can identify with that are really hurting you right now? Because if you can start to identify these issues, it's going to be much easier to know where you're going and what you're going to focus on. Now, the second thing is I want you to find some very specific support around codependency, because this is not an issue you can do by yourself. You might be able to do it for a little while, but it's kind of like going on a diet. If you go on a diet, you're really pumped and motivated for maybe a couple of weeks, but after that you get discouraged and you think, I don't really need the diet anyway, the food looks better. It's the same thing when you're trying to change a behavior. It's really hard to do it in isolation because eventually you're going to peter out, which is why if you have a support system, you're going to be much more likely to stay on track because you're not going to be alone in the process. So 2 things I always recommend is Al-Anon and Coda, which are 2 free 12-step programs that are really essential for codependency recovery because, like I said, you can't do this in isolation. And the 12 steps do guide you through how to recover. Part of what I want you to do is to kind of embrace the fact that changing these behaviors is going to take time, but it's going to be a lot easier and well-spent time if you get that support you need. Before I started my recovery, I felt really embarrassed by my codependency. I knew I was different and I knew my relationships weren't what I wanted them to be, but I also didn't know how to get out of it. And starting Al-Anon really helped me realize what that missing piece was. And the missing piece was support and guidance in a very loving environment. Number 3, I want you to start identifying some baby steps to get you started. So for instance, if setting boundaries is a goal for you, but that's too scary because it'd be way too hard for you to say no at this point, maybe identifying what you want and need and what your eventual boundaries would be a baby step. Or in self-care, a lot of times people say to me, well, I can't take time for myself. Well, what about 15 minutes a day? How can you start to carve out some time for yourself? Because a baby step is something where it's a little bit of a stretch, but it's not so much of a stretch that you freak out and you go, oh my God, I'm never gonna go through that anyway. Or it's something you think you should do. So you think, okay, I'm gonna set a boundary. But inside your heart, you're like, I'm not ready. That's too big a leap. That's okay. That's where baby steps can make you feel more successful. Because if you start to see progress, you're gonna be much more likely to continue the work. The other thing is that most codependent people are overachievers and they come into recovery and they want to fix everything. And they think, I can do this all by myself. And realistically, that's the fastest way people burn out. They come in, they do 180% and they crash and burn. And I don't want that for you. So part of what I want you to do is just figure out some baby steps. What would make you feel successful in the next month? Okay. And again, it can be around self-care. It can be about figuring out what you want and need. If you're ready to start saying no with some safe people, that might be a starting point. Start recognizing where you have control and where you don't. Because usually codependent people take responsibility for everything. They feel responsible for their family and their friends and how well their kids are doing and how well their spouse is succeeding. So part of what I want you to do is realize that your locus of control is you. The only thing you can 100% control is yourself. Then you start to feel a lot less overwhelmed and anxious because you don't have the world's problems on your shoulders anymore. And realizing that can give you a really good focal point in early recovery. Number 4, don't focus on healing your relationships right away. What I want you to do instead is focus on changing your own relationship behaviors. This was the biggest mistake I made in early recovery, is I wanted to fix my relationships because my happiness was wrapped up in other people, and I didn't recognize that because this was a major stuck point that really hindered my progress. Because the way you can change your relationships in early recovery is by looking at how you contribute to them. Are you being honest? Are you taking care of yourself? Are you saying no when you need to? Those are the things you can control. So what I want you to do is focus on your own relationship behavior first, because that's going to actually improve your relationships faster than trying to fix and change what other people are doing. Because again, that's not our locus of control. And number 5, I want you to find a mentor or a therapist to help you process the pain. Because part of why codependency recovery is so painful is because it often goes back to childhood. There might be some trauma, there might be some abuse. And while 12-step programs and other support groups are wonderful, they're not professionally trained to handle trauma or abuse. And so you might find there's a time in your recovery where you need professional help, okay? Another option is group therapy. And this can be more economical if you can't afford one-on-one therapy. Although honestly, there are a lot of organizations right now that do offer low-fee therapy. Open Path is one online that I know offers low-fee therapy if you want to check that out. But group therapy is also really helpful because you're actually going to be doing 2 things at once. You're going to be getting the professional support you need, but you're also, because you're in a group with other members, your relationship issues are going to come up and you're going to actually be able to deal with them with the guidance of the therapist. So while this can be challenging, this can be a really powerful way to get codependency support. Now, if you're not familiar with 12-step programs, I'm going to link a video here that I want you to go watch talking about 12-step programs and how they can benefit you in recovery. And hit subscribe because I would love it if you joined my community. Thanks so much.